بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سعادة السيد أحمد بن عبد الله آل محمود، نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء ووزير الدولة لشؤون مجلس الوزراء وممثل الدولة المضيف دولة قطر، سيدي صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير الحسن بن طلال حفظه الله، الراعي المؤسس لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم في عمان، سعادة ممثل رئيس جمهورية باكستان الإسلامية وراعي أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، دولة الدكتور تون مهاتير بن محمد، زميل شرف أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم ورئيس وزراء ماليزيا الأسبق ماليزيا، دولة الأستاذ الدكتور عبد السلام المجالي، رئيس مجلس إدارة أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم. أيتها السيدات، أيها السادة، أسعد الله صباحكم وأهلا وسهلا بكم إلى حفل افتتاح المؤتمر الثامن عشر لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم هنا في الدوحة في دولة قطر. خير ما نستهل به هذا الحفل تلاوة عطرة من التنزيل الحكيم يقرأها القارئ الشيخ محمد الحاج محمود الطالب. We start off with a recitation from the Holy Quran recited by Sheikh Muhammad al-Hajj Mahmoud al-Talib.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. ليجزي الله الصادقين بصدقهم ويعذب المنافقين إن شاء أو يتوب عليهم إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. صدق الله العظيم.
May I now invite His Excellency Mr. Ahmad bin Abdullah Al Mahmoud, Deputy Premier and Minister of State for Cabinet Affairs in Qatar, to present his welcoming remarks. اسمحوا لي أن أدعو سعادة السيد أحمد بن عبد الله آل محمود، نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء ووزير الدولة لشؤون مجلس الوزراء في دولة قطر لإلقاء كلمته الترحيبية.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير الحسن بن طلال، الراعي المؤسس لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، سعادة الدكتور محمد مهيسر، ممثل فخامة رئيس جمهورية باكستان الإسلامية وراعي أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، دولة الدكتور مهاتير محمد، زميل شرف الأكاديمية ورئيس وزراء ماليزيا الأسبق، دولة الدكتور عبد السلام المجالي، رئيس مجلس إدارة أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، الإخوة والأخوات أعضاء الأكاديمية، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسرني باسم دولة قطر أميراً وحكومة وشعباً أن أرحب بكم في مدينة الدوحة وفي المؤتمر 18 لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، فأهلاً وسهلاً بكم. كما أود أن أبلغكم تحيات أخيكم معالي الشيخ حمد بن جاسم بن جبر آل ثاني رئيس مجلس الوزراء ووزير الخارجية. وإنه لمن دواعي سعادتنا في دولة قطر أن نحتضن هذا التجمع العلمي العالمي ونساهم في رعاية هذا الحدث السنوي الهام، خاصة وأن مؤتمركم هذا العام يتزامن مع مرور 25 عاماً على إنشاء أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، فتهانينا لكم جميعاً بهذه المناسبة. الحضور الكرام، مما لا شك فيه أن الجهل أكبر عدو للإنسان، وأن العلم يحظى كما تعلمون لدى المسلمين بمكانة عالية. فأول أمر نزل من أوامر الله سبحانه وتعالى وأول كلمة من كلماته هي قوله سبحانه وتعالى: اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. وقوله سبحانه: قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب. ولا يخفى عليكم معرفة أن أهم عامل يساعد على التحصيل العلمي الجيد والنافع هو تقوى الله سبحانه وتعالى، حيث قال في محكم كتابه: واتقوا الله ويعلمكم الله. وقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: من عمل بما علم أورثه الله علم ما لم يعلم. الحضور الكرام، إننا في دولة قطر وتحت القيادة الرشيدة لحضرة صاحب السمو الشيخ حمد بن خليفة آل ثاني أمير البلاد المفدى، وسمو الشيخ تميم بن حمد آل ثاني ولي العهد الأمين، نؤمن إيمانا يقينا بأهمية هذا الموضوع الذي جمعنا اليوم في مدينة الدوحة، واحة العلوم. فدولة قطر تحرص باستمرار على الاهتمام بالعلم والعلماء، فأنشأت إلى جانب جامعتها الوطنية جامعة قطر المدينة التعليمية التي تستقطب العديد من أرقى الجامعات، كما ينشط في كل تلك الجامعات البحث العلمي من خلال واحة العلوم والتكنولوجيا. كما تخصص دولة قطر نسبة كبيرة من دخلها القومي للصرف على البحث العلمي. الحضور الكرام، إن موضوع مؤتمرنا هذا العام العالم الإسلامي والغرب، إعادة بناء الجسور من خلال العلوم والتكنولوجيا، له أهمية خاصة في هذا الوقت. فنحن ندرك بأنه من خلال التعاون الإيجابي مع الآخرين فإننا نتبادل بذلك الآراء والأفكار والخبرات، مما يؤدي إلى فتح آفاق جديدة للإبداع في تطوير عالمنا اليوم والذي أصبح مهدداً بالكثير من الأخطار المختلفة. فالمطلوب منا جميعاً هو سعي حثيث وترجمة لهذه العلوم على أرض الواقع، يتسنى لنا من خلالها الاستفادة القصوى، ونتمكن على ضوئها من تأمين حياة أفضل لأجيالنا القادمة. ومن هذا المنطلق فإننا نرى أهمية أن تسهم موضوعات المؤتمر في تحقيق التطوير العلمي لخطط التنمية للأمة الإسلامية، حتى نعود جزءاً مهماً في الساحة العلمية والتكنولوجية في عالم اليوم، ونستعيد احترامنا من جديد في مجالات العلوم المختلفة كما كان يحظى به أجدادنا السابقون كما تعلمون. ويسعدني الآن أن أعلن بسم الله وعلى بركته افتتاح المؤتمر 18 لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي، داعياً الله العلي القدير أن يكون هذا الجهد إضافة مميزة في سلسلة المؤتمرات التي تعقدها الأكاديمية، وأن تؤدي جهودكم المستمرة والمتميزة بالأكاديمية إلى تحقيق جميع الأهداف التي أنشئت من أجلها. أشكركم جميعاً، وأتمنى لكم ولمؤتمركم هذا كل التوفيق والنجاح لما فيه الخير والصلاح للإنسانية جمعاء. وفقكم الله، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Ahmed bin Abdullah Al Mahmoud, Deputy Premier and Minister of State for Cabinet Affairs, State of Qatar, for inaugurating the conference. يسرني الآن أن أدعو دولة الدكتور عبد السلام المجالي، رئيس مجلس إدارة أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم في الأردن، أن يقدم كلمته الترحيبية. May I now invite His Excellency Professor Abdul Salam Al-Majali, President of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences in Amman, Jordan, to present his opening remarks.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. معالي السيد أحمد بن عبد الله آل محمود، نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء ووزير الدولة لشؤون مجلس الوزراء، صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير الحسن بن طلال، الراعي المؤسس لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، دولة الأخ الدكتور مهاتير ابن محمد، زميل شرف لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، سعادة ممثل رئيس جمهورية الباكستان الإسلامية الدكتور مهاسير، الضيوف الكرام وزملاء الأكاديمية، أصحاب السعادة، سيداتي وسادتي، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اسمحوا لي أولاً أن أحيي صاحب السمو أمير دولة قطر حفظه الله ورعاه، وأشكره على دعمه الموصول لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم، وأن أقدم الشكر والامتنان لمعالي الأخ حمد بن جاسم بن جبر آل ثاني رئيس مجلس الوزراء ووزير الخارجية على كرم الوفادة، والشكر موصول لصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير الحسن بن طلال، والذي بادر قبل 25 عاماً برؤية ثاقبة للمشاركة في تأسيس أكاديمية العلوم العالم الإسلامي. كما أرحب بدولة الأخ الكبير الدكتور مهاتير محمد زميل شرف لأكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم وأحد كبار الداعمين والمؤازرين لها، والأخ الدكتور محمد علي مهسير مبعوث رئيس جمهورية باكستان الإسلامية. The title of today's conference clearly states our goal: to explore ways and means of rebuilding bridges between the East and West using the tools of science. We do this against a backdrop of a global political and economical turmoil. This conference is an attempt by the IAS to address relations between the Islamic world and the West. These are constantly being put to the test as problems facing OIC countries often have an international component. The objectives of the conference are to air the view of scientists and academicians from East and West on ways to bridge the divide between the Islamic world and West, particularly through scientific and technological collaboration. To address a number of recurring questions on the history of Islamic science, as well as science and spirituality, to rediscover how much we all have in common. Although this conference will address the independent yet interconnected aspects mentioned above, it aims to do so by identifying the strata at which we should be engaged to re-network our world again. Here, let me borrow an expression coined by our founding patron, Prince Al-Hassan, and say that we must divorce the failure of politics from policies. In the way we look at our current state of affairs, this is vital if we are to make a difference. For the moment, however, I hope to add some pointers in the interdisciplinary fashion for which the IAS has become famous. For the last 11 months, this part of the Islamic world, the Arab world, has been witnessing a tsunami of mass protests. Optimists call it the Arab Spring. It started on the 17th of December 2010 in Tunisia following an incident in the town of Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia between a street vendor and a policewoman. Protests en masse are not new in this region. However, what are the embedded reasons for this surge in rebelliousness in the region? What is it? During the days of the First World War, this region, which lies at the center of Islamic world, witnessed revolutions in Arabia led by the Hashemites against the Ottomans. The subsequent failure of the British and the French to keep their promises and grant Arabs their state were behind the revolutions that erupted then in 1920s and in the 30s in many parts of this region. After Israel was founded in 1948, Arabs took to the streets again en masse to express their outrage at the injustice that had afflicted the Palestinians and the failures of some of their leaders to retain the Arab Islamic identity of the Holy Land. A political earthquake shook the region in the 50s, which caused changes in the majority of the regimes. New regimes came into power, many of which were gradually contained by the West and grew distant from their people. The people of the region were expressing their anger that eventually translated itself into extreme political views from the very far right to the very far left. Indeed, the bitterness that had developed between Israel and the Arab countries culminated in a number of subsequent wars. 91, the Gulf War, which resulted in tremendous frustrations among the Arabs and Muslims, provided a new impetus for stakeholders to contemplate entering into negotiations aiming at resolving the Middle East conflict. 1991 Madrid Peace Conference marked the start of the intricate quest for peace. However, 20 years later, after Madrid, we only have a small piece of peace and even more frustration among the masses. The failure to achieve peace in the Middle East and to resolve the Palestinian question is one of the major reasons for Arab and Islamic frustration today. A failure of politics par excellence. The Palestine question has paralyzed the mindset of so many Arabs and Muslims, including political leaders. The complex politics of the region is a factor in turning many OIC countries into the biggest spenders on weapons in the world, at the expense of money earmarked for development, and has turned them into autocratic rather than democratic societies that followed the motto, continuity of government rather ingenuity in government. Hard security was and is the key concern of many regimes. Let me quote from the 2010 UNESCO science report authored by Adnan Badran and Munif Zoabi in one of its descriptive paragraphs. Governance in the majority of Arab countries is in a state of turmoil. Arab regimes are torn between upholding national security as they perceive it, and maintaining social orders on the one hand, and generally adopting good governance practices on the other. These practices include promoting democracy and the rule of law, promulgating accountability, and combating corruption, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, let me sum the policy's failure in terms of a number of time bombs that have been on the radar for at least for a few decades. The first manifests itself in the centralization of power in many OIC countries that led to rural areas losing their ability to manage their own affairs. This is failure in the local government policy. The second time bomb is the increase in population, which is resulting in unemployment and overstretching the services sector. Muslims are young, with at least 25% of the population of OIC countries below 15 years of age. This is a double-edged sword for decision makers. Young populations can stimulate growth and create dynamic societies, particularly if they are well-trained and well-educated. Here we are talking about education and innovation. The third-time bomb manifested itself in the inability of economies to achieve sustainable economic growth, particularly if we take the region's huge expenditure on weapons into account. These, together with the lack of freedom and disrespect for human rights, have been the failure of policies. But where and how does science come into this? Let me refer again the Unesco science report again, where we find that the picture is not rosy at all. The majority of OIC countries spend less than 0.5% on research and development. The numbers for human resources active in science are low. And apart from Egypt, Turkey, and Iran, the critical mass of researchers is not there in many countries. Moreover, apart from Malaysia, most OIC countries hardly export any high technology products. The report shows that less than 25 OIC countries have a National Academy of Sciences or play host to a supranational academy. This is an astounding fact, as academies of science are strong advocates of science and impartial advisory bodies. They are the vanguard of the scientific endeavor in countries such as the United States of America, Russia, and the United Kingdom and France. They are also part of the landscape in economically emerging economies such as Brazil, China, India, Malaysia, and Mexico. We also face an uphill challenge in terms of adopting science-based development policies to raise the socio-economic level of our countries. At the same time, our science and technology community is not making waves in the global knowledge pool, notwithstanding Turkey. More importantly, perhaps, we are not using science to combat our immediate health, water, and energy problems. Clearly, the failure of science-based development has aggravated societal tensions. For over 3 decades, we have known what to do, but somehow did not get around to doing it. Clearly, we have to have a change of mindset. We have to again believe in our will to change for the better in all domains. Let me call this failure of policy. Fellow scientists, dear friends, academies of science realize that they have a serious role to play in raising the awareness of decision makers and the public, and in helping people understand the importance of development and scientific advancement in achieving socio-economic progress. Let me acknowledge here the array of representatives of academies of sciences who are with us today from all corners of the world. The IAS is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, an achievement worthy of note. Slowly but surely, we are trying to renew the Ummah's its confidence back that things can change. We are telling our political leaders that security is a multifaceted goal that encompasses water, energy, food, and health securities, and not merely military security. The IAS does this on a shoestring budget, yet with dedication, determination, and confidence. We realize that we have long to go. We also realize that the activities of academies of science are often appreciated long after they are implemented. Only last year did we realize this with the Royal Society of London, which celebrated its 350th anniversary. And only recently we begun to realize what the Academy of Bayt al-Hikmah of Baghdad had achieved 1,200 years ago. My late friend Abdus Salam, Nobel laureate in 1979, used to insist that Bayt al-Hikmah was the institute of advanced study, of its championing the cause of science in the court of Al-Ma'mun. As the Academy of Sciences of the OIC, it is the intention of the IAS to be a champion for stimulating science for development, especially through capacity building, knowledge sharing, promotion of international and regional cooperation. I am confident that our meeting here will give our efforts a considerable boost. I am confident that each of us, in his or her way, can help in promoting understanding and tolerance. Let me conclude by again thanking you all, by thanking His Highness the Emir and the Prime Minister of the State of Qatar, our eminent guests, our colleagues at the Doha International Center for Interfaith Dialogue, our co-organizers at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Qatar, IAS fellows, and my colleagues from the IAS for making this event a reality. Thank you for joining the IAS in its effort in a spirit of open-mindedness. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Professor Abdus Salam Al-Majali, President of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences, for your opening remarks. ائذنوا لي أن أدعو دولة الدكتور مهاتير بن محمد، زميل شرف أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم ورئيس وزراء ماليزيا الأسبق ومؤسس مؤسسة بردانا للقيادة في ماليزيا لإلقاء كلمته الترحيبية. Allow me to invite His Excellency Tun Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, Honorary Fellow of the IAS and former Prime Minister of Malaysia, to present his opening remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. His Excellency the Deputy Premier of Qatar, Mr. Ahmad bin Abdullah Al Mahmoud, His Highness Prince Al Hassan Ibn Talal, Mr. Professor Abdul Salam Majali, the representative of the President of Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to say thank you very much to the government of Qatar for hosting this very important meeting. I would also like to thank the Islamic World Academy of Sciences for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to give some views, some of my perceptions of what is happening in the world today. we meet today at a very critical period in the history of mankind almost. We are seeing not just an uprising in some developing countries, an uprising in the Arab countries, which has been termed the Arab Spring, but we are also seeing a lot of protests in many of the developed countries. There are major protests in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in many European countries, in Australia and elsewhere. Obviously, people as a whole are not satisfied with their governments. There seem to be some failures in the governments not only of developing countries, but also of developed countries. The causes may be different, but the fact is that the people are not satisfied with their governments. It would seem that many governments have gone wrong, and many governments have failed. And the failed governments are not confined to the developing countries alone. We see developed countries have also their quota of failed governments. We see, for example, the collapse of the financial systems in the West, which has created a crisis that refuses to go away. All kinds of actions have been taken to end the crisis, but we see the crisis getting even worse. Lately, we hear that countries like Greece has actually failed, has become bankrupt, but for the aid extended to this developed country by Germany, for example. And we are told that this might spread to countries like Italy, to countries like Spain and Portugal. So the dissatisfaction arising in the West is due to government not being able to handle their finances, basically. They have been moved no longer by the need to enrich themselves. In fact, they have come up with almost a slogan that greed is great. That is a measure of the collapse of moral sense in the West. But in the East also we see, or in the developing countries also, we see this kind of failure on the parts of governments to appreciate the needs of the people. The people may tolerate this for quite some time, but eventually they will lose their patience. And when they lose their patience, they will take action, and sometimes the action may take the form of civil war or even a lot of violence and killings. We may feel that these governments deserve what happens to them, but we need to question ourselves also to see whether we are free from all the weaknesses that we see in these developing countries as well as the developed countries. There is a need, I think, for the whole world to come together to consider or reconsider the methods and the systems that we use in the governance of our countries. We seem to fail to appreciate the needs of people. Where capitalism prevails, we see this chase after money, overcoming good sense. Today, more money is being, more trade is being done in the capital markets, in the financial markets, than real trade in terms of the production of goods, the sales of goods, and trading, etc. Such is the concentration on the financial market that we find countries going bankrupt because of the actions taken in the financial market. Malaysia had this experience in 1997 and 1998 when the currency traders decided to devalue our currency. We became very poor, and of course we had to live like poor people. Fortunately for us, we were able to overcome the crisis through doing the things that we were told not to do. Now we see a similar crisis on a grander scale happening in the developed countries. And strangely, we find them doing exactly the same things that they've told us not to do. They are now bailing out companies and banks. They are controlling the value of currencies, etc. So when faced with a crisis, new ideas need to be put up in order to overcome the crisis. Denying that there is a crisis is not going to help us in any way. So there is today a crisis in the East, a crisis in the West, a crisis in the developed, a crisis in the developing countries. It is good if all would come together and consider the problems faced by us, the similarities and the differences. And I believe that this particular meeting that we are holding here today would perhaps contribute a little to the initiation of new thinking of what should really be done by governments in order to govern their countries properly in the interest, basically, of the people whom they govern. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that we will reach some conclusions, or we will come up with some ideas as to how we can tackle these problems that we are faced with, and also how both East and West, or Europe and the Muslim world, should come together to find solutions for what, after all, are common problems faced by all of us. I thank you.
Thank you kindly to Dr. Mahathir bin Mohammed, Honorary Fellow of the IAS, for your introductory remarks. شكرا جزيلا لدولة الدكتور مهاتير بن محمد على كلمته الترحيبية. إذن لي الآن بدعوة الأستاذ الدكتور محمد علي مهيسر، أمين عام مساعد للجنة الوزارية للتعاون العلمي والتكنولوجي الكومستك، لقراءة رسالة فخامة رئيس جمهورية باكستان الإسلامية وراعي أكاديمية العالم الإسلامي للعلوم. It is with pleasure that I call upon His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Ali Maheser, Assistant Coordinator General Comstec, to deliver the message of His Excellency the President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister of Qatar, Your Highness Prince Hassan bin Talal, Excellency Dr. Mahathir Mohammed, Excellency Dr. Abdul Salam Wajali, Excellencies, Fellows of the Islamic Academy of Sciences, ladies and gentlemen. Message from Mr. Asif Ali Zardari, President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, on the occasion of 18th International Science Conference of Islamic World Academy of Sciences. Quote, I wish to congratulate Islamic World Academy of Science on eve of its 18th annual conference in Doha. I also wish to welcome the distinguished scientists, the fellows of the IAS, and all the participants of the conference to deliberate on a most relevant theme of our time, the Islamic world and the West, rebuilding bridges through science and technology. Some people wrongly perceive Islam as an adversary of the West and have been predicting a clash of civilizations. This grave misconception needs to be corrected. Scientific cooperation can be an excellent way to engage in a meaningful dialogue with West, as it opens up opportunities to deepen international partnerships and establish mutually beneficial environments. Shared scientific goals that promote greater understanding between our cultures will help bring the Islamic people and the West together for a common cause. Science and Islam are both committed to the common cause of pursuing truth and appreciating the secrets of nature and the treasures of knowledge surrounding us. It is therefore inherently suited to build bridges and close chasms that are slowly taking us apart on account of misunderstandings between us and the West. Through intensely debated and wisely conceived programs and projects, we can help boost our understanding of each other's culture, beliefs, and opinions. The Islamic World Academy of Sciences can play an important role in bridging the increasing gap between Islam and the West. I feel that the fellows of the IAS at this important juncture in our history have the skills and prudence to devise credible strategies for the OIC leadership to tackle global challenges facing the Muslim world today. I wish the 18th Conference of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences all success in its endeavor and pray for successful accomplishment of its goals. Unquote. Thank you.
Without further ado, let me introduce His Royal Highness Crown Prince Al-Hassan bin Talal of Jordan, founding patron of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, dear friends, I think that the distinguished representatives and colleagues on the podium here would forgive me if I went straight to the nub of the issues that we hope to discuss in terms of content. And to start by saying that we speak of the importance of technology, indeed science and technology, for Islamic countries, but I would like to emphasize that I'm here to speak of the importance of science and technology for humanity as a whole. I remember years ago speaking with Al-Marhum Zulfiqar Ali Bhutto when the subject was proposed, and today Prime Minister Mahathir mentioned the importance of the indignado, the indignant, as they have been described in Spain. I've discovered that I've been indignant for most of my life. And I remember President Bhutto addressing the subject of Islamic socialism. Today, we are here to address the subject of Islamic science. And I would like to put the question, what is Islamic science? When we speak of the importance of DNA. Science is science. This morning, I would like to place these discussions in the context of the following problematic, the following questions. One, how can we, in the Islamic world, create and nurture a culture of science exploration, a culture of scientific exploration? And two, what role can and should such a culture of science play in addressing the greatest social, environmental, and political questions of our time? I remember when Al Gore received in Singapore some time ago the prize for global warming. I happened to be one of the recipients from West Asia, that is, who spoke of the importance of human warning. I believe an interdisciplinary approach is required if we are to talk about developing an empirical knowledge base for the regions of our respective population. And in that context, it was in the mid-70s that I attended in Latin America the first conference on the importance of the transfer of science and technology between regional countries. We have now moved from data to informatics to knowledge, and we still need to build a system of mutually intelligible knowledge in each region. If we talk of water, we hear different versions of the truth. Turkish water rights, Iranian water rights, Iraqi water rights, the 8 versions of the truth in terms of the Nile Basin. Isn't it time that we recognized the danger of the continued absence of epistemological knowledge from which we can extrapolate learning and teaching by analogy? التعلم والتعليم بالقياس, placing ourselves in the position of the other and developing our universities to work with other universities around the world, using the advantages of e-culture, virtual reality. I personally believe in virtuous reality one day. The standards of the Islamic science of today will only survive if they are global, will only survive if perspectives and concerns build from local and regional commons towards global commons, of which we are truly a part and in which we participate effectively. 70% of educators in the United States are from somewhere else. Of that 70%, I'm told, a significant number of Arabs and Muslims are achievers in maths and science. In my small country, as I've said, and I say it with some embarrassment again, 30% of people who go to universities, only 30% go there on merit. The rest go to university out of the kindness of the state, what elsewhere is called patronage. So it's clear to me, and I think to all of us, as you were saying, Your Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister, that if we want a future on the basis of what we know rather than whom we know, then it is time that we remember إِنَّا وَإِنْ كَانَتْ أَوَائِلُنَا الْحَسَبُ وَالنَّسَبُ are not a way to proceed with scientific excellence. It is not a question of intra-regional scientific dialogue that we seek alone, but the contributions of different mindsets, paradigms that facilitate dialogue about the best route forward and best practice. And in that context, we cannot accept less than the best. This is not about us in this room, ladies and gentlemen. It's not even about the so-called intellectual elite. We are all agreed on this platform that it is about the human dignity of 1.9 billion Muslims and the human dignity of the world in which we live and to which we can contribute. Europe has made it a priority through the Bologna process, finalized in '99 with seminal work starting in the 1990s, to create a European higher education area based on international cooperation, international exchange, and at present 47 countries are signatories. It is heartening to note that of the 57 countries of the OIC, in a meeting in Riyadh just a few days ago, the OIC, and I quote, agreed to take a fresh look at university systems. If this is just another banal statement, then we are in trouble. I would like you, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, academicians, to stand up and be counted. I have nothing more to live for other than the good of this Arab and Muslim identity that some of us share, and indeed the vindication of the contribution of people who happen to be born Arab or Muslim all over the world. We have to change the stereotypes that have been created around us. How can we do that without a harmonized qualification framework which facilitates the sharing of knowledge and free academic exchange and movement of ideas across borders? We have a silk route, a spice route. What about the route of ideas? The trick is to set realistic standards and ensure their adherence and their implementation. The European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education was set up with that purpose in mind. There is no reason in a region which shares common languages, ASEAN, SAARC, West Asia, North Africa, Sahel, and beyond. Let us remember, as I referred to our Indian colleagues, the largest community of Muslims is in India, where learning in a competitive context has produced some of the finest minds in the world. Human beings all. There is no reason why we cannot achieve and contribute to evolving the understanding, not of what we did, and I thank the organizers of 1001 Muslim Discoveries, recently hosted by prominent institutions in London and New York, for reminding us of the achievements of the past. But the point is an-na'tabir, that we take the lesson and move forward. We speak of the breakdown of traditional diplomacy. I speak of the breakdown of conversations. I happen to carry a title. I was born with it. Your Highness. When people say to me, Your Highness, I look behind me to question who they're talking to. I'm still a child at heart. I have a childish naivete about these things. But I want to say to you that in terms of our conversations, the noble art of conversation between us Muslims has become a martial art. We are continuously denigrating each other in the name of nationalism, in the name of class cultures in the name of ethno-religious populist movements. Here we're talking about science, aqlaniyya. The longest distance in the world is between here and here, between the head and the mind. So I ask you in terms of science diplomacy, Prime Minister Mahathir, you and I maybe are not the world's most recognized diplomats, but I ask you, if we need to promote and explain what we are doing in the field of science, the reason for our being together here today, is it not a question of not emphasizing that we close ranks, but that we open ranks and minds and hearts at all levels, at the regional level and at the global level? The socio-cultural, political and ethnic work scientists are doing is too vast for us to continue to exempt ourselves. Why are we investing in a certain technology? Often because political leaders think it is a good idea. Today we'll invest in nuclear energy. But is it really a priority? Are we investing in the right technologies? When we exclude issues such as food security and biosecurity, which include us all, our various traditions can and must inform and enrich scientific endeavor. Islam requires us to contemplate nature, our environment. Al-Hima. Al-Hima is human and physical environment. Hima is today recognized by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Muslim banks in the West represent billions of dollars, $3.1 trillion in terms of portfolios managed for Muslims abroad. No one there criticizes the fact that they are Muslim because the money is in the bank, so to speak. Isn't it time that we brought this interplay between the physical and human environment into our region? Our Muslim institutions are being stolen under our very noses. المأسسة الإسلامية تسرق ونحن نراقب الاستثمارات في كل مكان. And I would like to suggest that if we are going to speak in the future of a social cohesion fund, which brings an integrity system into our region, then this integrity should be based on a combination of traditional and cutting-edge knowledge. Traditional in the context of zakat, waqf, Islamic insurance, and many others. Foundations. We speak of a science foundation. Do we yet have a science foundation to which endowments can be received from all over the Muslim world and beyond? While we're searching for answers to the same questions, I would like to suggest that it is time for the study of science inspired by knowledge from east, west, north or south, renew the quest for truth. Education is an important tool, but while our universities are not recognized internationally, while our investments do not empower our population, enable our population in contributing to scientific truth, I think we have identified the reason for our current failures and dismay. Deputy Prime Minister, you were asking, why is it that we are lagging behind? I humbly submit to you, أنا الفقير لرحمة الله تعالى، أننا نقصر في حق أبنائنا عندما نتحدث عن إعانتهم، رعايتهم ونحن بحاجة ماسة لنتحدث عن إعانتهم بمعنى تمكينهم من القيام بواجباتهم ضمن الحقوق الكريمة التي توفرت لهم اليوم. نقول حقوق وواجبات. اليوم أصر في الحديث عن مجتمع التميز في أن نقلب هذه الكلمات ونبدأ بالواجبات ونؤكد الحقوق التي بكرم الحكام والمجتمعات الحديثة تتوفر في أماكن كثيرة. As for intellectual property and research and development, we have all repeated that according to Unesco, 88% of R&D was conducted in the developed countries in 2002 and 76% in 2000. I shall be attending the Malta 5 conference in early December in Paris, and I hope that those of you who represent the 57 countries would coordinate a new initiative in the context of UNESCO, whereby chemists and scientists do not continue with this complaint, but if any of us has a study to present on how this reality could be changed in terms of programs, not in terms of a generous administrative decision, as in the state of Qatar, where 2.8% of GDP now goes to science and technology, and I thank you for this pioneering role. But this is intellectual generosity at the top. We need intellectual generosity of those who can convince policymakers, and we're talking policy here, ladies and gentlemen, not politics, that this is an important step forward. I would like to suggest that internships, artisanships, academies, to bridge the crossover from learning to doing, career services which liaise between universities, governments, and the private sector. We in tiny Jordan now have established a system of mentoring, in the process of establishing a system whereby Americans of relevant concerns from UCLA educate Jordanians, and this ustadiyya, this mentoring process, bridges the gap between academe and public life. Jobs. As to the failure to patent and commercialize research fundings, let me remind you that Israel lodges virtually the same amount of patents per year as all of the Middle East combined. So we talk about qualitative gaps. Let us remind ourselves that 3 chemists from Israel have been awarded the Nobel Prize. Not the Nobel Peace Prize, and I sometimes wonder what the Nobel Peace Prize is really about. I remember Madame Golda Meir being asked when President Sadat got off the plane and embraced the Prime Minister of Israel, do you think that they deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? She said, I don't know anything about that, but they certainly deserve an Oscar. The lack of any coherent intellectual property regime, which will of its very nature have to be regional. Deputy Prime Minister was saying a day will come when Qatar or countries from this region will come up with a new invention. Do we have the capability of suggesting that patenting regimes in Europe and the United States, which is a slow process and extremely costly and enormously bureaucratic, can be a process that would apply to this part of the world? I remember the grassroots warrior Vandana Shiva in India working to turn the tide of the theft of intellectual property in over 400 cases in India, starting with the neem tree and ending with scientific discoveries. It is time that every Arab state, every Muslim state, promises its citizens access to a fast, cost-effective, and globally recognized patent system. If we can't do it by state, then maybe we can do it by region. But let me remind you, no region, with maybe the exception of the ASEAN region, I'm not that familiar. I look forward to being invited to visit them one day. Not to the Linkawi investment conference. I have an allergy to Linkawi and Davos. Why? Because they're taught about people. Yes, I mean, you have the occasional seminar on people. But why should there be a Porto Alegre and the Davos? Why can't we combine the two? Isn't it time that we recognize you cannot criticize the defense expenditure in our part of the world? But I'll tell you exactly what a lead pencil and a paperclip costs. We talk about security. Security for whom? Whose security? Whose insecurity? We talk about young people demonstrating in the street. Can you blame them? They are living on the dark side of the moon when it comes to getting answers from anyone about anything. If we want them to be citizens of the present and the future, they have to become stakeholders. So I would suggest that the issue of brain drain, particularly scientific brain drain, at this conference be discussed once again in a context of new networks. I presented to you yesterday the incoming Secretary General of the Arab Association of Universities. Let me remind you that 34% of physicians working in the UK today are Arabs, and 54% of Arab students study abroad and do not return to their home countries. Water, energy, nanotechnology are all supranational titles. No one country can address these issues individually. We speak of intellectual property rights, but what of water and energy rights? Desalination, without it we would not be taking a shower every morning, thanks to your wonderful hospitality here. A combination of expenditure on water and energy, a synergy. Can such a synergy lead to an aménagement de territoire? I wonder, Deputy Prime Minister, as you continue with the DEFNA in certain areas all along the Gulf Littoral, the Arab Gulf Littoral, isn't the sea going to take its revenge in other areas? Have we coordinated with the sea? It's an alarming question. We in the Arab Levant expect 2012 to be a year of earthquakes because we live on the Rift Valley, which includes the Nile Basin countries and the Jordan Rift Valley all the way to Turkey. The last major earthquake was in 1212. So 2012, we're told by geologists and paleontologists, is a shaky year. I ask myself, when we talk about nuclear energy, major canal schemes, pipelines, new discoveries of gas in the Eastern Mediterranean, is there any coordination of these projects? Can projects be put into a context before they are mooted by those who are going to make quick returns? The Ummah, ladies and gentlemen, is not just about Muslims. The Ummah refers to an entire corpus of human thought, psychology, experience, and expertise of which we are all a part. We're not a minority, we're not a tribe, we're not a clan. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam came to us لِيُتَمِّمْ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, to complete the giving of ethics, of akhlaq. Is it not time that we lived up to some of this important message? Oil flows cannot be safeguarded solely by military force guarding the ports of the Arabian Gulf or anywhere else. Even with the developments in Libya today offering certain alternatives in gas exports. Pipeline infrastructure from East Asia through Central Asia and the Eurasian Rim to Europe through Russia and Turkey is important only inasmuch as it can serve the interest of people living next to the pipelines. The new solar pipeline, Desert Tech, should take into consideration al-Hashin wal-Muhammashin, the marginalized and the vulnerable. Only then will we resume trust that we have broken, contracts that we have abused with all our peoples. The Arctic Council, which was funded by organizations such as Senator Lugar's Alaska Fund and Paul Volcker's proposal for an asymmetric regional development bank, our proposals for the creation of an international Zakat Foundation could work in tandem, the traditional with the modern. And I wonder whether the Gulf Cooperation Council could not be one of the pioneers of a systemic cooperation concept rather than continuing with unilateral and bilateral policies alone. We need both. The Arab League today is what it is. I cannot say any more. The OIC is what it is. You know what it is. We know what it is. But my question here is that if the region controls 70% of the world's oil, controls in parentheses, and 60% of its gas, the point is not so much that these reserves are running out. The point is that our region has the money and the expertise to broaden its role through science and technology and seize the opportunity of developing new energy technologies. Green economy, according to the UN Research Institute for Social Development, has led to concerns in regard to the new forms of conditionality and protectionism, threats to food security from biofuels and the co-modification of nature, as well as market-led approaches to developments that have increased north-south and intergroup inequalities in recent decades. So what is our answer? Why is it that oil, gas, wind, and solar energy are regarded as mutually exclusive technologies? Why do the media debate the issue in terms of one or the other, just like we talk about Islam and the West? Apples and oranges, you could say. Islam is in the West and has been in the West for centuries. What is so threatening about diversifying our energy portfolio as a region to include all types of energy, from the sky as well as from the ground? Just such a via media, a middle path into the future could be provided for nanotechnology. Nanotech may be able to help the oil and gas industry find new fields and extract more than existing ones. A case study is the efforts of an international partnership by the Center of Excellence for Nanotechnology, CENT, at King Fahd University for Petroleum and Minerals and supported by Saudi Aramco to provide a prototype of the kind of partnerships and consortia we should be considering. As for bioethics and biosecurity, it is not only a question of answering الشعب يريد, the people need. The people have to know what they want in terms of a clear understanding of how to become stakeholders, how to understand the importance of challenges. I say this as a member of the Nuclear Threat Initiative which was supportive of the concept of establishing MESSIDS, a Middle East Center for Infectious Disease Surveillance. Lateral thinking, ladies and gentlemen, again. We constitute in the so-called Muslim world 1/5 of humanity. At Deauville, in May, the G8 asked the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and other international financial institutions to assist in developing SMEs, in developing packages of assistance to Tunisia and to Egypt, Jordan and Morocco. Is bilateral assistance the only answer? Where is our institutional capability? As George Qurum, the former Minister of Finance of Lebanon, my colleague on the Arab Thought Forum, pointed out at the Kuwait Arab Summit Conference, Economic Summit Conference. Enough اقتصاد ريعي, rentier economics. Let us talk about productivity. And why do we only turn to the EBRD? Why can we not turn to China, to ASEAN, to a closer relationship with new members of this world community at the cutting edge? We need to create an authentic agenda for ourselves and an authentic conversations with our peers and our partners. This is my understanding of capacity building based on know-how, dignity, and institutional knowledge. Years ago, I sat in this hall with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa, and we launched a meeting of the Arab Thought Forum together. Arab thought and Muslim thought, ladies and gentlemen, are by no means a contradiction in terms. And woe betide he or she who thinks along those lines. There is still much that we can do to create a world of wisdom in which we participate as a principal contributor to the change our people seek. With them, we can build trust, and with them, we have to build a better future. I thank you for your patience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness, for delivering the keynote address during the inaugural session. شكرا لصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير الحسن بن طلال على كلمته الرئيسة في حفل الافتتاح. Your Excellency, we have a small ceremony arranged now to honor some of our fellows who are attending for the first time and some of our prize winners. Please allow me to call upon His Excellency Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad in his capacity as Honorary Fellow of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences to present the certificates of fellowship to a number of newly elected fellows of the IAS. 7 of them, and they are sitting at the front, and we'll invite them to come over and receive their certificates of fellowship from His Excellency Tun Mahathir. May I firstly call upon His Excellency Professor Askar Akayev, former President of Kyrgyzstan, to receive his certificate of fellowship from Tun Mahathir. May I call upon Professor Farouk Elbaz to walk over to receive his certificate of fellowship from Tun Mahathir. Professor Kazim Bahbahani from Kuwait, please. Professor Nasreen Ghaddar from Lebanon. Professor Rabia Hussain from Pakistan. Professor Malik Ma'za from Algeria, South Africa. And Professor Robert Nigmatullin from Bashkiristan, Tatarstan, Russia. Thank you to Dr. Mahathir. May I now request His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan to present the IAS Comstech Ibrahim Memorial Award to Dr. Faris Gavran Kapitanovic of Bosnia for his distinction or distinctive career in medical services. Professor Faris. May I also request you, sir, Your Royal Highness, to present the Honorary Fellowship Award to His Excellency, the Deputy Premier of Qatar. This is the Honorary Fellowship that has been awarded to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Qatar, in appreciation of his hosting of the IAS conference. And on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the IAS, may I request His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan to present the shield of the IAS to His Excellency Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. And the shield of the IAS to our President, His Excellency Professor Majali. And to His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Ali Maheser, the representative of His Excellency the President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Thank you, Excellencies. This brings us to the end of this opening session of the 18th conference. We shall resume in 20 minutes in this hall. And now I'd like you to join me in thanking our eminent guests for their talks, for their speeches, and for being with us this morning. Thank you.